And this was just amazing to see like all those machines. This costs like 50 million, this costs 60 million, and like okay, that's kind of impressive. For a while already, I had this idea. I want to do something with a billion rows. I still believe, if you want to set out this goal, hey, I want to organize a viral coding challenge, I feel odds for this to work out are pretty low. And here it was the opposite.
In this episode, I'm talking to Gunnar Morling, a principal technologist for Confluent. Don't worry, he explains what a principal technologist does in the interview. Gunnar's been a friend of mine for years, and he's also been a driving force behind several influential projects like Hibernate and Debezium. Today, we're talking about his infamous 1 billion row challenge from January of 2024, a viral project where he inspired dozens, maybe hundreds of developers to tackle a deceptively simple problem. Let's listen in. Gunnar, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tim. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
It is great to have you here. Before we get started, what does a principal technologist do?
You start with the tough questions right out of the gate, I guess.
What would you say you do here?
Yeah, I guess I'm still trying to figure out, No, I mean, more seriously, the way I like to think about it is there's roughly speaking two facets to it. There's an outwards facing facet, which I guess folks are more familiar with. So this, relates to writing. So I spend a lot of my time on writing for my blog about all kinds of interesting stuff: Kafka, Flink, Debezium, databases,
the usual Gunnar suspects.
The usual Gunnar stuff, exactly. So I spend lots of time on that. I spend lots of time, let's say a reasonable part of my time with doing talks. So I go to conferences like Current or other places and speak about the stuff. And so, all that is like outwards facing, I would say. And then there's another non-public side to that role, which is about, internal consultancy. So sometimes, our leadership, they have questions around technology. So maybe somebody wants to know, hey, how do watermarks in Flink work? And I would put together like a one-pager.
And you say, well, I don't know. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows, but here's how I understand it. Or maybe we want to think about, so does it make sense for us to invest into certain technologies? Is this something we should pay attention, or this is doesn't matter, this is going to go away in 6 months, so we don't have to care about it. So I would provide my input on that. I would provide input on the product. So it's a very multifaceted role, and I guess you would call it like make your own adventure or something. So it's a bit like that.
Yeah, a little bit of choose your own adventure. And I have the privilege of being in some of those conversations with you. Sometimes I get invited for when they want somebody to tell jokes, and that's always good to be a part of those.
Yeah. No, that's pretty much it.
From there, tell us about your first job.
Wow, I feel like you want to make me feel old. I mean, this is
gotta
go. Yeah, gotta go. A long time back.
It's not me.
Yeah. So actually, let me start. I want to mention two things. So one, I guess it wasn't technically speaking my first real job, but while I was a student at a university, actually I used to work at AMD, the semiconductor manufacturer, and they used to have a big site in Dresden where I used to study. Now this is actually, they sold it. It's what's called Global Foundries now. But I was a student employee there, so I worked like 12 to 20 hours or something per week.
Is it still a fab now? It was a fab.
It's still a fab there now, but they kind of are not on like the latest process generations. So they
sure, it's one of those, but those are still important
back then,
processes.
It was like they did like the Athlon thing, and it was like the first time when they actually made it like really hard for Intel again. So this was right when I joined. Actually, this was very cool to see. I joined and then it all took off. But yes, I was working there as a student, and not in the manufacturing part, but in the e-learning part. So we help people to learn about all that stuff. For instance, if you wanted to go into the clean room, you had to do some training, so you would know how to put on like your bunny suit and all this kind of stuff. And I was working as I hardly dare to say PHP programmer, and we worked on those web-based trainings, and it was actually big fun because it was like a super interesting area, and very just super exciting to be a part of this still kind of out of world technology in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that
for me
it
was
that.
Burger King, but an AMD fab is is also a pretty good job.
Yeah,
but hey,
I
PHP,
really
right?
enjoyed it. It was PHP, and then it was like ASP.NET, whatever version back then.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, all the good stuff, and of course I did like lots of mistakes, like putting everything into session state and wondering why nothing would work. But it was a good learning experience, and people were friendly. And I know actually at one point I even had the opportunity to go into the clean room because we wanted to take some pictures for a new training, and this was just amazing to see like all those machines. And this cost like 50 million, this cost 60 million, and like okay, that's kind of impressive.
It's massively expensive, and that these days, fab equipment is
you can add like a zero there, it's like 200 million now.
But tell us about a very interesting, maybe one of the most interesting problems you've tackled. You've done a number of pretty cool things,
right?
So what comes to the top of the list?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things I guess we could talk about, but as I was preparing for that, I thought it would be interesting to speak about what's called the 1 billion row challenge, and this was a viral coding challenge, which I did last year, and we can, drill into all the details of that. I guess I just should say, technically speaking, I was organizing that challenge for the Java community, so I didn't really do the challenge myself, but I made the challenge for other people, but I still think it's an interesting topic to talk about.
It 1,000% belongs on this podcast. I was standing back and watching it. It was an incredible achievement in a number of ways, and I would love to hear how did you get the idea? Had you ever tried anything like that before?
Right.
Just tell us the whole story. How did it start, and how did it unfold?
Absolutely. I mean, as with so many of those things, it was kind of coincidental. And I still believe, if you want to set out this goal, hey, I want to organize a viral coding challenge, I feel odds for this to work out are pretty low. And here it was the opposite.
Let me go give that to my team. Hey, folks, go make a viral challenge.
Yeah, this is like super tough. So make it viral. Exactly. So this is just not how it works, right? This was not how it was the case here. This was like really coincidental. So it was actually during the holiday season in the year before last year. So between Christmas and New Year's Eve, I had some slow time, and I was thinking, hey, what should I do? And as we nerds do, I went off and tinkered around with stuff, and then for some reason for a while already, I had this idea. I want to do something with 1 billion rows. It's just like it's a round number. Everybody can kind of relate to it, and I didn't really have a specific idea, but this somehow this number was on my mind. And then, as I had this time at my hands, I felt, okay, maybe I can evolve this into some kind of challenge. And then the idea was, let's see what it takes to write a program, a Java program, which processes a file with 1 billion rows, and it creates some basic calculation on that. And so the example which I set up there was like this 1 billion row file. It has temperature measurements keyed by a weather station. So there would be measurements for Denver or Austin and Hamburg where I live, and and you had to calculate the min, the max, and the average value per weather station across those 1 billion rows. So this was the idea.
What was the cardinality of the weather stations? There's probably not 1 billion of those.
Oh, yes. That's actually a very good question, because this is already where it started to, deviate from the assumptions I probably had implicitly. But so let me just briefly wrap this up.
Yeah,
so,
sorry,
so I set this out, and I thought, okay, maybe like a handful of people will participate. And actually, my wife, she was, obviously, she's smarter than me. And she said, okay, if you put this out, you have to put some limit in there, so you don't create like an unlimited amount of work for yourself. If everybody comes and participates, and I was like, whatever, I'm gonna do it like this.
She believes in you. She thinks it's
she believes in me more than I do, apparently, because I felt like this is like 5 people are gonna do it, so who is gonna care? And well, obviously she was more right than I was, because actually a lot of people participated, and I created literally a huge amount of work for myself. But so then I put it out on January 1st, and the challenge ran for the entire month of January, and we can talk about all the details. But as you ask about the cardinality, so this is it's a great question actually, because this was one of the learnings already. So the thing is, this 1 billion row file, it has a size of 13 to 14 gigabytes. So it's quite a sizable file, right? So I could put it to GitHub for people to download it, and everybody could work the same file. So instead, what I did is I created a test data generator, so people would just have to get this generator, run it, and then they could create their own 1 billion row file. And now for that file, for that generator, I used some station names which I got of Wikipedia, and it was like 400 something or so. And now what I didn't expect is people started immediately to optimize heavily for this particular key set. So they provided implementations which would perform very well for those 413 station names in that example dataset generator. And maybe they would perform worse if you had like more station names or just other station names. And now, of course, for me, this wasn't what I had in mind, right? For me, this is just an example data generator, but you should create an implementation which generally works well. But then, what do you do? Because people already spent time, so they optimized and they started and, they put lots of effort to make it work well for those particular names. And then there was another fraction of people and they said, no, we want to solve it for like 10K station names. We want to solve the general problem. And so what we ended up doing is we created like two kinds of evaluations, and actually different people were at the top of those two different evaluations because they just implemented the problem in different ways.
Now a quick word from our sponsor. Confluent Developer, the podcast, is brought to you by Confluent Developer, the website, which has everything you need as a developer of data streaming systems. And it's completely free. We've got curriculum, hands-on exercises, executable tutorials, the online data streaming engineer certification, also free, a way to find a meetup near you, those are free. Everything is there. I really want you to be successful in your journey as a data streaming engineer, and this is the site that has what you need. Check it out at developer.confluent.io. That's developer.confluent.io. Now back to the show. And one of those was optimized just lowest time for my set, and the other one was lowest time generally.
Exactly, right. Because what happened is, if you want to aggregate those measurements, you need to have some sort of a map, right? So you want to put those measurements into a map, and you get like the next row for Denver. You want to put it into the accumulator for Denver, which you have, right? So you need to have some sort of map structure. And now, of course, Java provides a general purpose map as part of its standard library, but if you know what the keys are which you want to put into this map, you can create a more optimal custom map just for those keys. And this is what people did. So they created their own map-like implementations, which would give the best performance for those known station names. And they did this by choosing, for instance, particular hashing functions which would never collide for those known names. Go. So that's how you do it, right? And again, of course, this is not what I had on my mind, but I also felt, okay, it's fair. People interpreted the problem that way, and it's and I shouldn't stop them. And so
if there's only a few hundred station names, you could have a very sparse map. The no colliding sparse map. You could burn a bunch of memory on something that is going to be faster.
So what people did is essentially they implemented what's called an open addressing scheme. So essentially, you take the key of the name, like the name, and you convert it into an integer, and you use this as an index, which you then use to as an index within an array, and this is where you store the value. And now, if you want to find a hash function which gives you that integer derived from the names, which doesn't collide for those known names, because then it's just the fastest.
What was the experience like as it's unfolding? Because I was seeing it explode on social media, and I confess I never actually did the billion row challenge. I was pretty busy doing stuff, but I was watching it happen. What was it like to see it start to explode?
Right. I mean, to be honest, it was a huge emotional journey, I would say, because there's so many things to say around this. So first of all, there is this viral nature, and I felt it actually, in a sense, it is kind of scary and intimidating because, you put out this thing and you kind of lose then control over what is going to happen with it, because people take it and they make out of it what they want to do with it. And you may or may not like this. So for instance, I made this specifically for the Java community for two reasons, essentially. First, that's the language I'm familiar with. I know the tool set. I know how to run the stuff. I didn't want to be in the business of installing Rust tool chains and C compilers and all this kind of stuff.
I was just about to say, somebody's going to want to do this in Rust.
Yeah. And so and this is exactly what happened. So I did it for Java. Also because I wanted to promote it a bit. But then people took it, and of course they did in like all kinds of languages, even COBOL and, Rust, of course, and C, and I don't know, like literally every language you could imagine. Then also tools like databases like Postgres and Snowflake, and really like it was intense. But anyways, some of those people made it like super competitive. So, hey, we are better than Java, and this is how amazing we are. And for me, this was not really the goal. Even like getting to who is the fastest, this wasn't even my goal. My goal was more, okay, let's make this a learning experience. So this, I felt, okay, let's collaborate and, see how we can all learn together. So for instance, also it was, unlike in other challenges, you actually could look at the code. So if you had participated, I could take a look at your code and say, oh, Tim is doing something amazing there. This is a cool trick, and I can take it and I can improve my own implementation with it. I mean, obviously, I just don't take your code and say, this is mine. This would be silly, right? But
right.
People could take inspiration. This was happened. So for me, it was more about this learning. And then there was this super competitive notion at some point, and I really didn't like it. This was not what I wanted it to be. But yeah, you lose control, right? Because, there's hundreds of people, and, you don't get to tell them what to do, right? So this was kind of scary in the sense, and, here this had overall very positive energy, I would say, right? And everybody kind of liked it, and it was like a cool thing. But I also felt like if you are at the center of that, and it's actually like a negative thing, let's say you say something stupid online, like everybody comes and like, hits you on the head, then this can be like really devastating, right? So I felt this is kind of it's really like scary in a sense to have this massive energy, and you kind of are just like, you're not in the driver's seat necessarily.
Yeah, you're really not. Speaking of alternate solutions, at the time I was at Startree.
Right.
On the Apache Pinot community,
right?
And we solved it with Pinot, which was an example of a kind of an off-label.
Right.
This isn't really the challenge. We're not entering this as a result, but wouldn't it be interesting?
Absolutely.
And
yes.
Pinot has an index that's super well optimized for that kind of thing. As
Right.
long as you don't count the ingest time, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, I think, with the database-based solutions was, do you count ingest? Do you just count the query?
Right, yeah, exactly. And
all these kinds of things.
Gets like hard to compare, and that's also, I just didn't have the time to install something like Pinot or whatever. So I figured just on those, Java implementations which I could actually evaluate. And then also, as you ask, how was the experience? Well, actually, what also happened, so yes, people came and wanted to participate, but also people came and they wanted to help run it and help organize it. And this was just amazing to see how people, build infrastructure to tooling, like shell scripts to, automate that process of maintaining the leaderboard and having like a test suite. They helped to make it work, which I found really cool because, what is in it for people to do that, they just do it because they like being part of the community, right?
In terms of evaluating the results, you had a standard instance that you ran those on in a kind of an objective way.
Right, yeah, exactly. So that was the idea. I rented a machine and like in a how do you call it? Like not one of the big cloud providers, but like a colo space or like where you could have a dedicated server. So that was the idea. And now initially,
seriously? Oh, okay. I thought it was an EC2 instance.
No, it was not EC2 because then you might have noisy neighbors and they might give you like a burst behaviors, right? So it's much harder to compare. So what I thought, so I went to this cloud provider which gave me like my own machine. But initially I thought, okay, I'm gonna go there and I use like what they would call exclusive virtual cores. So I thought, okay, it's in a virtual machine, but they tell me I have my own cores, so I'm free from like noisy neighbors, and this should be objective. And this worked for like the first week or so, and then every night, every day, people would create their PRs with the new implementations. I would wake up and I would take the 20, 30 or whatever and run them in the morning. And then one day I came back and like all the results were suddenly off. So it seemed like, hey, wait a minute, suddenly everything is like much faster than before. So I ran some of the implementations which already had run, and they were like twice as fast. And so I was, okay, what's happening? And then what turned out, well, it was a virtual machine, and yes, it had like exclusive cores, but then they just decided to move that workload to another instance, which was more capable. And
a faster end, they're giving you more value.
Yeah, exactly. They were giving more value. So maybe, they saw this
not
workload.
Even charging for it.
Yes,
we just love you. We want.
There you go. And
like,
really messed up the things for me, of course. So what I ended up doing is I actually got my own exclusive machine, and again somebody from the community came to help me, because I'm not a big Linux admin person, and I knew I want to do things like disabling turbo boost and disabling hyper-threading and sort of stuff to make it like more objective, but I didn't really know how to do it.
I would also need help with those things. I need somebody to look over my shoulder and make sure
exactly. And so I went online and asked, hey, is there anybody who can help me with it? And then some guy, which I didn't know before, he said, yes, I can help you with it. I have experience. So we hopped on a call, and I got a good feel. And then the next minute, he sent me his SSH key. I uploaded his key to the machine, and then he could go and configure the thing. And it worked. And this was just amazing to see people do all those things.
Two things about that. Number one, as we're nerds, and when there's the thing that we're good at, we really like to do. And if somebody needs help with the thing that we're narrowly specialized in. Our specialties, if you just look at the whole world of things humans are good at, we have these incredibly narrow specialties, right? And so when somebody needs that, that's the old XKCD, stand back, I know regular expressions. You're saving the day. And so that's an impulse that we have anyway. And secondarily, I think when you have something that's so virally successful as 1BRC was, that's a train people want to get on board. It's easier to get help. It's not some little backwater project struggling and you're like, oh, does anybody care about me? Everybody was talking about it, and so it was kind of an honor to be involved.
I guess.
And that's a great dynamic about something that really takes off like that.
Yeah, so this was really, I don't know, just a positive experience to see all that. I had there was one single interaction with a person who was like really hostile, and I ended up like muting them on GitHub or whatever. But this was like the only thing. Other than that, like everything was like super supportive and very helpful. And I felt, man, this is just so great to see.
And that's typical. If I look back on the communities I've been a part of, I have been, I would say, blessed to be in healthy communities where that kind of behavior is unusual. Right. It happens, and you drop a hammer. Yeah. And a healthy ecosystem expels toxins, and
you got to deal with it quickly,
you have
right?
Growth. Yeah,
you got to deal with it quickly. That's also what I always felt in the open source communities I participated in. You have to stop those things early on, and then actually you can have a very healthy dynamic.
Yeah. And important to note, so if you don't know who Gunnar is, and at the beginning I gave a little bit of an intro, this is not his first rodeo. You've been, you have been a maintainer of and participant in some fairly prominent open source talks. So you've got you've been able to build those muscles.
I would say so. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: can you think of anything that you've done like this that didn't work? Because I know at the time, my leaders near me in the company I was at were saying things like, well, we should do something like this. Right. And like we were joking, the impulse is, oh, okay, team, go do a viral thing. You don't just do a viral thing. So have you tried projects like this, or even games like this, and they haven't gone on to this kind of success? What's that track record like?
Right. I mean, no, I haven't done any things, similar to a challenge like this. I mean, I've worked on different open source projects, led some of them. Some were successful, some didn't go, very far. But I guess that's just the nature of the game, right? So you want to try out stuff and see what.
It's funny. I don't know the ones that didn't go far, but I guess that's because they didn't go far.
Exactly.
I know. I know Debezium, I know Hibernate. Those they're moderate success. Those little bit of results.
But for instance, Hibernate is a good example because for some while we tried what's called Hibernate OGM, or what was called Hibernate OGM, Object Grid Mapper. So this was the idea to take the Hibernate ORM APIs and apply them to NoSQL stores. So like back then, like MongoDB was, I mean, it's still a thing, but back then it was like really all the rage, and Cassandra and all the
everybody was talking about it. Yeah,
exactly. And so we tried to make Hibernate work with that, and for various reasons, it didn't really go anywhere. There was just too much of a mismatch, I would say, between those APIs as they were back then and what those databases could, work with.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Interesting. So again, the things that don't work,
exactly.
just don't know about until you start.
Gotta keep trying.
telling the historical stories. Yeah. What did you take away from it? Like, were there results for the company you worked for? Results for you?
Right.
What do you do? How are you different now?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for the company, I mean, back then I was, at a startup called Decodable, also in the Flink space back then. And for them, or for us back then, I would say it was maybe, it was a marketing success, I would say. But very importantly, it was not planned like that, but this was really, my own idea. I didn't even talk to anybody before because I just didn't expect it to be a thing, really. And then January happened, and it kind of blew off. And first week of January is still kind of slow, and I thought, okay, I'm fine doing it, But then it like kept growing, and I spent like literally 12 hours per day doing the thing, and I felt okay. Gotta raise a flag and say, hey guys, I have this challenge, and I feel like I want to keep it going, so what do we do? And they were like super supportive. So really, like this entire month, I worked on that thing, and then they helped me to pay for that environment, and they helped me to organize, for instance, some prizes. So I sent T-shirts and coffee mugs to like the top participants in the end. So we put a light touch of marketing, but it never was around. This was never the idea. It was more like, okay, they were supportive of it, so of course I would add it to the README and the GitHub repo and stuff. So this was what happened for them. I'm still super grateful that they were that supportive. And for me, I mean, I learned so many things, right? I mean, I also learned how to send T-shirts and coffee mugs to people around the world, which was like a massive challenge by itself, because if you want to do this stuff, you want to send to people in South Korea and, Brazil and... I don't know, all over the place, really. It actually just took me like, I don't know, a couple of days just to make that part happen, actually, in the end.
That is it. That's funny. I mean, this is why I have the great Ale Gutierrez on my team, because that...
I would have loved to have somebody for me to do that.
That's just a button they press, and it happens. But if somebody walks up to you, and you're a person like you or me, and they say, we need to send a T-shirt to somebody in Jakarta.
Right, yeah, exactly. And this was happening. I think it had Indonesia, but definitely countries there, Japan. So it was like really super expensive just in terms of the shipment, actually.
Yeah. And there are services. There are people have created abstraction layers that actually make it push button easy, but you don't have access. You don't know what those are.
Exactly,
and there are people who do. So that's a whole thing.
And then I also wanted to give everybody like their own individual letter of certification. So actually, I learned how to use the mail order or what's it, the mail merge facility in macOS, so I can print like 165 PDF files with like the individual name and the time, all this good stuff. So it was just very interesting to organize it, and then of course like steering more or less that community and try to keep everything on track. So it's definitely was a big personal learning experience.
Next up, the billion address mail merge.
yeah, that would be a challenge for sure.
You think you'll do something like this again sometime?
Yeah, so people keep asking about it, and I mean, I'm still a bit unsure. So the thing is, overall, yes, I would like to do it again, but I mean, obviously, it needs to be something which is like also kind of cool and which is different, right? So you don't want to do like a 2 billion row challenge; that would be kind of useless. So you want to do another kind of challenge, and I felt it was so successful because it hit a very specific combination of being very easy to explain. So like, at the beginning of our conversation, I could explain it to you in 30 seconds. And you pretty much, to every person, you can explain this in 30 seconds. And at the same time, this problem has lots of potential to keep those people busy for an entire month. And this is like, really the smartest developers in the Java community, right? Also, by the way, Cliff Click and like the OGs working on the Java hotspot VM, people like those, Alex Shipilev, they participated. So like really high profile people, right? So you want to keep those engaged for months, it has to have some sort of depth to it, right? And so far, I just really haven't found another problem which would combine those two traits, being easy to explain and still having this kind of unlimited potential. So I'm still looking for ideas. If somebody has an idea which kind of checks those two boxes, I would be all ears.
My guest today has been Gunnar Morling. Gunnar, thanks for being a part of the Confluent Developer Podcast.
Thank you so much, Tim, for having me. This was a great pleasure. Thank you.